Welcome to another episode of Red and Black, where your conservatism is not just the color that you're used to. I'm Lenny McAllister, and for some odd reason, I hear that Jell-O Pudding Pop stock is on the rise this week. And I brought in three of my favorite stock followers to explain to me why. Kira Davis, before I say something like, hey, can you tell me what the heck's going on with the Jell-O stock these days?
I think their stock's taken a bit of a plunge. It's going to be interesting. I think Jell-O hardest hit.
Thank you. Jeff Charles, before you tell me to have a Coke and a smile and to shut the F up, all hat tips to the late Richard Pryor, can you tell me what's going on in the world with the Jell-O Pudding Pops, the Jell-O Pudding Pops?
Well, I can tell you that I spy a continued decline in the stocks as far as Pudding Pops and JELLL goes.
Wow.
I'd have to say that was pretty cool. I didn't even know you were old enough to even realize that you can use that joke. But
Jeff is like king of he's aiming to be king of the dad jokes. I'm afraid we're stuck with it.
Wait,
Yep.
whoa. You be the smart one with the hat on. Leave me to the corny jokes, dude. I'm not gonna have a role on this show.
Hey, I'm a dad too. I gotta express myself.
Yeah, but you're funny. You're genuinely funny. Unlike me.
No competition.
Yes, thank you very well. You pipe down there, miss. Oh, I'm gonna take over your time slot. Don't let me know when you're going live. Jeff's still a little sensitive with that. Anywho, let me go to the person that actually was around when I Spy was written. Dr. Christopher Metzler, when you and the aforementioned Mr. Cosby were putting together the show, did you leave before he pulled out his stash of Quaaludes to make sure that you had no culpability in that whatsoever?
I cannot confirm or deny that.
I mean, this is Dr. Metzler, right? Yeah. Cosby had to have gotten him from somewhere.
Oh, he has a JD PhD.
I cannot confirm nor deny.
Holy cow. That's the one degree he doesn't have is a medical degree that we know of. Lord knows. Chris has done it.
Hey, you never know.
Yeah, exactly.
No, we don't. That's the thing. Every time we think we know everything about Chris Metzler, he's like, well, actually, I did this. No.
Yeah, actually, I was knighted by the Queen of England, so I'm actually a British knight, and I'm not even a British citizen.
Exactly. So we'll get to Sir Christopher Metzler in just a second, which, by the way, look, he has like 12 middle names. My kids get mad after having 2 middle names. He has like 12 of them. One of them has to have a Sir in there somewhere, right?
They don't. However, when my grandmother was naming me, and right after I was born, every time she would put my name, she would put Esquire after it.
Ooh,
yeah,
that's cool.
Like, wow.
Is that how it works?
That's prophesying. She's prophesying.
Yeah, she spoke it into existence.
I love it. Praise God.
Yes. Was that before or after the first time she called you the boy?
The boy.
That was before.
Okay.
Christopher Metzler, Esquire, the boy.
That's right.
That's all the Columbia, Oxford, and street swag that you can put into one person. There is it.
Hey.
Kira Davis, let me go to you first about this Cosby stuff, because look, there's really enough content to have a 4-hour show if we chose to. But we're not going to, because we're just not going to. Let's start with this, and we'll get to the legal analyst in just a second. But I didn't digress with any darn thing. You're just thirsty. Jeez.
You took too long.
He's prophesying too.
You took too long to digress.
Exactly, right? Kira, you had a lot of people saying that this should have been a foregone conclusion, that he should have never gone to trial in the first place. But then you also have people that are furious that he's out of jail without looking at the legal ramifications why. I'm going to talk to you about the cultural aspect of it. I'm going to go to Chris with the legal aspect of it, and then I'm going to go to Jeff with something else that I'll make up after I talk to the two of you first. How about that?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, And I was concerned about this too in the beginning, but honestly, I kind of believed all this about Bill Cosby. So as a woman, I think I was very prone to set aside whatever legal issues were going on with it. I think it was just easier for me. But because, as you say, Lenny, the cultural aspect of this was so huge, I knew there were issues with the prosecution. But at the same time, what was going on was this fever pitch of concern surrounding sexual harassment in the entertainment industry. It hit so fast and so hard that I don't think it could have done anything but sort of fizzle out once the Hollywood, the typical suspects in Hollywood got a hold of it. It became more commercialized and less about true instances of real, concern. And now you had women coming out of everywhere saying, well, I had a bad date with Aziz Ansari, and so that was sexual harassment. Or this guy told me I looked pretty on set, and that was sexual harassment. So all of these stories were, when this was going down with Bill Cosby, all of these stories were converging in media at the same time. And it was creating this frenzy, and people wanted solutions right away. So Harvey Weinstein got him into court finally. There were a couple of other people here and there who were facing charges. Bill Cosby, in 10 years earlier, had some of these accusations come out in a more clear way. He wouldn't have been facing prosecution. But I definitely believe, and I'm saying this as somebody who admits that I was wanting to see him prosecuted, not based on the law, but based on my anger towards him, that when Bill Cosby came along, it wasn't as much about him paying the price according to the justice system. It was about him being a symbol in the media for, hey, look, we're doing something about this. And I think this blew up. I'm sad that it blew up. I just want to go out on record to say that I do believe that Bill Cosby is an abuser. And I've actually believed it for a long time, long before this came out. I have, a couple of stories I can share about, I won't, but if you want to hear them, about people I know in the entertainment industry many, many years ago, before anyone even knew that Bill Cosby was like this, sharing their experiences with me and going, oh my gosh. And I didn't believe it at the time. But when, as things went on, I thought, wow, no, this is true. So I think, yeah, he was, I don't want to call Bill Cosby a victim, but in this respect, I think this case was the victim of societal frenzy, and it shows you what can happen if we move too fast. We don't slow down and let the wheels of justice turn the way they should be, which oftentimes is slow.
Dr. Metzler, I'm going to use Kira's phraseology to set up a question, which is, from a legal standpoint, based on all the facts in this case and how we even got to him being in a criminal trial, was he in fact a victim of how the legal maneuvering of this case went from a deposition where it was supposed to be sealed, it settled a civil suit, and it was in his past, and settled with a non-disclosure that was all of a sudden unsealed and went down a path that wouldn't traditionally happen. If he were an attorney that was only worth, $500,000 versus what he's actually worth, and if he was some, attorney that settled car accidents and not this world famous comedian, would he have even been in that situation with a judge basically trying to quote unquote put him in his place by saying, you want to be a moralist, I got something for you?
Yeah, so the case was legally flawed from the beginning. Here's why. Number one, there was an existing agreement. He essentially relied on that to his detriment. Number one, there was an existing agreement with the prosecutor that they would not prosecute him. So that's number one. If that's the case, you can't just say, changed my mind, gonna prosecute you. That's number one. Number two, we're forgetting that the DA was in a heated race for election. That DA actually filed on the day that the statute of limitation had expired, which then means that it is in fact a political prosecution. That's exactly what happened in this case. He ended up winning by saying, I'm going to prosecute Bill Cosby, which he did. And there's another aspect of this too. Remember, a number of the woke folk stopped supporting Bill Cosby after he started talking about pull up your pants, etc., etc., etc. A number of them turned against him. So given that, look, from a legal standpoint, this case was doomed from the beginning. Here's the problem, though. Now, as it goes to Weinstein and a number of other people, their cases are also likely to be tossed because, in fact, there's so much conjecture and non-supported facts and lectures and all of that stuff that they have been putting forth. Look, as a former prosecutor, this is not the way you manage the prosecution of a case. And so who won in all of this? Well, Hollywood won in all of this. And the Me Too movement is, in fact, the ultimate victim here. And, when you see that Gloria Allred is putting together a press conference immediately to say, okay, we're still moving forward with our civil suit against him. My question, though, is, Gloria, you're so concerned about justice and freedom. Girl, why aren't you helping to free Britney? That's a real... I just don't. You or your daughter, Lisa Bloom. Come on now.
Right. Come on.
Yes.
So hold on, because I'm going to pivot to Britney, and then I'm going to come back to Bill Cosby to Jeff. And Jeff, I'm going to give you both. Number one, the same exact week where Bill Cosby comes out, and I think we've all seen the memes where people are like, free Britney. And the meme says in the response that the universe says, well, the best I can do is free Bill Cosby. Take it or leave it. It's just really, really bad. But Jeff, number one, this is the same week where the judge said, yeah, Britney, although you're a grown-ass woman, you're going to have to keep that IUD in you despite what you want to do with your own body. Number two, and by the way, your daddy's still going to be on the conservatorship. Sorry. So to Chris's point, if you got all these people talking about empowering women and speaking out for women, one hell of a contrast is going on right now because you got Bill Cosby being freed on a legal technicality, and you have Britney Spears, who's still going to apparently live this nightmare despite pleading her case just last week.
This is yet another stories demonstrating that the government is horrible at what it does. Yet another story demonstrating why pushing for a system where the government has more power and more control is a horrible idea. With Britney Spears, I honestly cannot understand why any judge would rule the way that he did. I don't understand all the legalities. I'm not an attorney, but it seems to me that if you're drugging somebody and keeping them in virtual slavery, then that should be illegal. I mean, it seems like there are other ways they could have worked this out other than allowing this woman to continue to be abused. And I know that they're going to keep fighting it. I did read that. They're going to keep trying. Hopefully they'll get a judge that actually has some humanity and does the right thing. Now, going back to the Cosby case, I'm going to give a little bit of a perspective here. And before I go into this, I'm just going to say straight out, I do not believe the notion that Bill Cosby is innocent. I know a lot of people are saying that he didn't do any of this stuff that he's accused of. I'm sorry. Wasn't it like 50 women who accused him? Maybe some of them are lying. Maybe some of them were
I know one.
Yeah, there is absolutely a way that every single one of these women are lying. I'm sorry, that my tinfoil hat doesn't go that far, unless there's some huge conspiracy, and there's not. He's a piece of crap. However, the ruling was right. And one thing that we're not thinking about here is, as Black Americans, we should be glad that ruling was made. Even if we think that Bill Cosby is a piece of crap, that ruling is good for Black people. I was speaking with a friend of mine who happens to be a constitutional attorney, And he was telling me, you know, this sets a precedent, because who is most likely to be in that situation where a prosecutor comes and says, hey, if you give us some information, or if you do this for us, we won't prosecute you, and then they renege on the deal? Who's most likely to be in that position? Black Americans, especially Black people living in cities that have a high poverty rate. They can't afford a high-powered attorney team like Bill Cosby could. They can get in a really bad situation, and the government would get away with it scot-free because these people don't have the means by which they can defend themselves legally. So a case like this sets that precedent. So even though Cosby went free, at least this is something that could apply to Black people who find themselves in a similar situation but don't have the resources to fight it. So again, it's a sucky reality, but at the same time, that was the right decision.
I want to point out.
Good, Kara.
I want to point out some parallels here between this and some of the zealous prosecution we see of police officers. And this also, it can apply to that as well, because there are some cases where the public sentiment is so huge that it drives prosecutors to overcharge or charge too quickly, not investigate, and then it becomes a situation that is ripe for explosion. It was the same thing with the Zimmerman case. The Zimmerman case was one of the first cases that got me to TV, right? It was one of the first cases that I was ever asked to go on TV to discuss. So I just have this in my mind all the time. But one of the problems with the Zimmerman case from the beginning is that even though this guy surely deserved these charges, like some charges, and he was surely at fault here, the public sentiment was so heightened, like it was so ginned up and everyone was so fired up that the Florida prosecutor brought these charges that he could never be convicted on. You know, first-degree murder, that suggests so much. It just was too much. And so of course he wasn't going to get the jail term he deserved because the charges were not based on the law and what could be proven, but on public sentiment. And this is the problem that we have. We have the same problem in LA now with this Attorney General George Gascon, who now he's a DA. He's supposed to represent the victims and the victims' families, and instead was voted in on the back of this idea of Black Lives Matter and of public sentiment. And now everything he does is based on what he perceives to be public sentiment against the police, against the criminal system, against the prison system. I mean, it gets ugly if we let the media and public sentiment prosecute the cases instead of the lawyers.
And Chris, is this not I mean, we're almost making a case, and people are going to say, man, Len, that's one hell of a leap. I don't think it is, but I'm going to make the leap anyway. Isn't this almost a reason why Black people should be pretty damn adherent to the Constitution and the constitutional law? Because it's where the subjectivity comes into play, where people start looking for loopholes that, generally speaking, poor people, underserved people, and oftentimes those are Black people and brown people in America, that's where they get jammed up. It's when there's an adherence to the law that says, no, 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 the rule is the rule, and I don't give a flip if the person is poor and Black or rich and white or rich and Black and poor and white. This is what the law is, and as long as you adhere to it, more often than not, the letter of the law saves the essence of what fairness is supposed to be in this country.
Yeah, I don't think that that's a leap at all. In fact, I think it's reality. Look, these nuances in the law, unless you know them, and unless you're able to say, I can do this, this, or the other. How many times as a prosecutor did I see a case where what would come before us would be an agreement not to prosecute? Agreement not to prosecute, okay, fine. Then a couple months later, the same person comes up on the same charge. I'm like, guys, we have an agreement not to prosecute. Yep. Well, they don't remember that agreement, but that's not the role of the prosecutor. Role of the prosecutor is to turn over all of the evidence, including exculpatory evidence. Prosecutors don't do that. And because Black and brown people generally get public defenders. Look, half the time, the public defender, the case is called, the public defender barely knows the name of the client.
Bingo.
And what they're going to do is say, just plead, and without looking at the file. But again, they've got 1,000 files
Yep.
that they have to do. So this is critical. I think, Jeff, you're 100% right. This is, Black people are the ones, Black and brown people are the ones winning here relative to that. Because I'm going to tell you, prosecution is not what it is supposed to be. It is too political. They're overcharging. Look, you can't, you overcharge, you're going to lose the case. But it's constant. And of course, we know from California, the vice president was such a phenomenal prosecutor.
Whoa.
Yeah, I
President
never did a do not prosecute agreement and then went back on it. I'm sure she never did that.
No.
and totally on the up and up.
Don't ask Nina Simone's estate, but I digress.
You can't digress. You already drank all your wine.
No, there's still some.
Well, of course you do, because you're just the wine connoisseur of red and black. And Kira, what's in that bottle, by the way, Kira? I digress.
It's just water. I'm in Phoenix. It's 106 degrees. I cannot drink wine. I will die of dehydration.
Oh God.
It's 106 degrees here today. I'm dying.
Yeah, and as you sit in air conditioning. Chris, let me go back to you on. Well, whose fault is that? I mean, anyhow, I die. Never mind. I die of heat exhaustion if you're not careful in Phoenix this week. Dr. Metzler, speaking of where Black people win, and based off of what you just did with the Cosby case, is there a win for Black people? Because I know you've been following the whole professor, now tenured Professor Jones dilemma, journey, whatever you want to call it, that whole soap opera down there at the University of North Carolina. Who wins with that? Is it CRT wins because she got her tenure? Do Black people win because they, there was a certain segment that put their foot down? Does nobody win? It's just one Black woman getting tenure and it's going to be forgotten about in a week. Where does it all sit in the whole CRT fight that we've been hearing about constantly over the last several months?
Well, see, here's the thing with that. It is, in fact, going to be forgotten. But here are the mistakes made by the board. Again, you have to make decisions with facts. First of all, she is not a critical race theorist. She's never been a critical race theorist.
Yeah.
She's never been to law school. She doesn't know anything about CRT. Look, the fact is, here is where we're missing the conversation on CRT. What people don't want to happen is from K through 12, they don't want all of this guilt shaming, all of that. They don't want that indoctrinated into their children from the beginning. It's this new movement of, oh, well, you have to feel bad. You have to level the playing. You have to but that's not CRT. And see, we're going down this dangerous road where everything is CRT. It's like, wow, it's just not.
But that's not just them. That's the left too. The left doesn't know what CRT is. They're like, everything is CRT to them.
No, the left doesn't know either. No, you're absolutely right. It's like I said, grifters on the left, grifters on the right. I mean, that's essentially what you have in this particular case. Now, Chris Rufo, dude, all the stuff that you are accusing people of doing, grifting and making money off of CRT is exactly what you're doing. So my thing is, let's have the discussion. We don't want Black kids believing that they will forever be held back by race. We don't want white kids believing that, in fact, they are somehow responsible for that. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about CRT. CRT, and again, remember, CRT came out of critical legal studies. They came first, CRT came second. So stop. We're in the situation now where we're looking like complete fools. CRT. Someone asked me on Facebook what CRT is. I posted my definition. She goes, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to screenshot this." Do what you need to do, baby. You're going to screenshot it? Oh, I'm scared. Oh, let me take it down.
That means that you'll educate some people and they'll actually find out what it is.
Yes.
I gotta segue into that eventually. Just hold that thought. It's amazing that you would bring that up. Dr. Metzler setting you up again, Kira. You gotta love him. Make sure you send him his, royalty checks for doing all this work for you on the side. Jeff, you down with CRT?
Yeah, you know me.
So, thank you. I'm the king of dad jokes around here. Don't ever forget that, because you would have never thought about that. Anywho, Jeff, when it comes to this, and we keep talking about the made-up boogeyman on the left that's supposed to scare people away from voting for the right, and then the right's, sometimes they're missteps with obvious, easy things to win. Yes, we want to talk about race in America. It's an ugly history. No, we don't want to shame people into thinking that there's no redemption in America, whether it's for Black people that can go from rags to riches, white people that can see the error of their ways, where people could have owned slaves and then, I don't know, grew up to be Father Mike in Chicago. I'm just making stuff up. The bottom line is people continue to sit here and go down these wrong paths because, to Dr. M's point, there's a lot of grifting to be made off of both pushing CRT the wrong way, but also scaring people away from calling everything CRT and pushing them in another direction as well.
What sucks about it is that neither side actually wants to have an honest discussion on CRT and on the issues that CRT deals with. Now, I read critical race theory in an introduction, and I just started reading critical race theory in the First Amendment. As I'm reading through it, that's when I really started realizing that a lot of what people were saying on the right was false. I don't think that they're all doing it on purpose, but we are looking stupid because we label everything as critical race theory when a lot of it is just woke, what I call woke theology.
Yes.
Like the 1619 Project, that's more along the woke theology line. That's not critical race theory. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't teachers who are taking elements of critical race theory and kind of using it for a certain purpose, but not everything is critical race theory. And the theory itself is bad enough without having to lie about it. I mean, like Christopher Rufo straight up said, I plan to take every bad idea that the left has and label it as critical race theory as a way, basically, essentially as a way to manipulate conservatives. But the problem is that people on the left can say, no, you guys don't know what you're talking about. Like their big talking point is that people who criticize it don't even know what it is. Guess what? You're helping them by lying to conservatives about it and having them label things as CRT that are not CRT. The thing is that we have to, and the other issue is that we're focusing so much on banning it. You can't really ban it. You can compete with it. You can give a better idea. We can put something something forward that is better than woke theology and CRT, but we're not. We just think, oh, if they ban it, then it'll go away. No, they're going to ban certain words that the teachers can't use. And like I said on Twitter, the teachers are just going to go and grab a thesaurus and find different ways to say it. And they're actually saying that they're going to do this, by the way. So I'm not making this up. This is not conjecture. There are teachers who even signed a pledge. Over 4,000 teachers signed a pledge to continue teaching some of the elements of CRT, not CRT itself, in spite of laws banning it. So we're not winning this battle by banning it. And the good news is that some surveys that I've seen indicate that most Americans aren't on board with all this stuff, but we don't want to get it to the point to where the left is able to persuade them to go the other way. So we need to start competing. There are problems that CRT claims to solve, or woke theology. They say racial disparities, income disparities, wealth disparities, education disparities. Our woke theology can cure that ill. And on the right, we're just like, no, that's not a good solution. But then when it comes to solution, we're like, oh, then we walk away from the whole conversation because we want to pretend that the problem doesn't exist. If we don't want the woke mob to take over, if we don't want them to persuade the rest of the nation, we've got to come back with actual solutions to these problems. And we need to focus more on selling them than just talking about what the left is doing.
Oh, but hold on. Let me get back to something that Kira said, because Kira did the fantastic little TV trick there. She knew that I would pivot to her next by saying, I disagree. Said nothing else, shook her head, gave the body language, knowing that I would get the cue and then come back to her and be like, oh, Kira, you seem to disagree with what Jeff said. Tell us why.
Did I? Oh, my face gave it away. No, I disagree. This is a point Jeff and I disagree on. I disagree on this idea. I find it a little simplistic. I'm not calling you simple, Jeff, but I find it a simplistic way to view it because absolutely you can ban CRT. You can ban whatever you want. And I don't think you have to have a replacement theology or something to do, like, you can do one step and then do another. And right now what's happening, and also we're pretending that this is a national conversation. The idea is national, but these are local level issues that parents, and let's remember that there are parents going to their local school boards responding to specific curriculum. It's the pundits, it's us pundits that are making this more generalized. But the other thing is CRT is the reason why the left and the right can get it so muddled is because it's bullshit and there's nothing to hold on to in it. It is ethereal. It is really hard to, these are academic concepts that have almost no solid value to them. It's not critical. It's not a good skill to teach in school anyway. It's why it's a theory. But also, you've got people like Joy Reid out there saying that critical race theory is Black history. You know, so of course, how do you respond to that? I absolutely believe that you can absolutely decide as a school board, we're going to ban critical race theory, even though, yeah, there's all kinds of ways around it. There's all kinds of things in school that are banned that teachers teach anyway, because parents don't have to sit in a classroom all day. But CRT is Marxism. It's just Marxism in blackface. And we have banned Marxism in the classroom in the past. So there's nothing wrong with saying, there is something symbolic about it as well. As Americans, the older I get, the more I realize that sometimes we can set the tone for our society. The way that you might set the tone for your relationship, you know, as the head of your household, you set the tone for your family. There are things in this country that set the tone for how we relate to each other and the patriotism that we experience. It's why we have holidays like Thanksgiving. Why do you need Thanksgiving? What is it? It's just a stupid day where people say thank you. But what it does is it sets a tone as a nation that says we agree corporately that this is our value, that these are our values, that one day a year we set aside to thank the Creator for the blessings that we have and for bringing us through the conflict that we've had. So I have no problem with parents going to their school boards and saying, we're going to ban this, whether or not it's here or not. We're going to ban it because we feel that this is a dangerous theory that if it even gets a hold of in our classrooms, it's going to erode the sense of unity, community, patriotism, thinking, however you want to phrase it. So I'm absolutely in favor of, quote, banning it. But Jeff is right that just because you ban it doesn't mean it goes away. You're going to have to be able to argue some constitutional principles that are going to give people a reason to rally around as well. Because I always say sometimes when a bunch of people are mad, it's because they have something to be mad about. So maybe there's people that are mad that there's these gaps in our history curriculum, there's these gaps in our teaching, and they want that filled. But because they're also just so manipulated by all the media BS out there that divides us from left and right, that they just take this hardcore position on it rather than wanting to. And then of course there are the people like Rufro and Joy Reid who muddy the waters because they don't know what it is or they don't care what it is. Now nobody knows what it is, except that what we don't want is, as Chris put, we don't want teaching these kids these values that would help them resent each other or themselves.
Yeah, just to clarify something really quick there. I'm not necessarily against banning. I mean, because if you're in a local community and you go to your school board, you have the right to determine what your kids are taught. Now, I'm not too fond of the state banning it. I'd rather this be done locally. But at the same time, that's not that my point isn't that
but if you're banning it
parents
locally,
shouldn't have a say. My point isn't that parents shouldn't have a say in what their kids are being taught. I'm just saying that when you ban it, don't think that's the end all be all, because you haven't won yet. And I think that we're getting into that mode where we think if we get it banned, then we've won the battle. No. The left can come back. They can persuade more people. They can play the long game. We know they're good at it. Once they persuade enough people, those bans go away. So at the end of the day, we have to compete with a better idea. And this isn't just in the classroom. This is in other areas as well, in other institutions. I mean, you've got it in the military. I wrote a story today about it coming into the Michigan Police Department. We've got to come with something better if we're going to succeed in this. Banning is, like you said, it's only a step, but it's more of a Band-Aid. If we want to crush the idea, then we need to get into people's minds. There's a reason why we don't allow fascism to be taught and communism, like you said, because that battle has been won, but we need to make sure it continues to be won.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Number one, we do allow there to be a discussion about fascism. We do allow a discussion to be about communism. And doesn't it almost make the counterpoint to, hey, look, it's a little un-American to say what we are and what we are not going to teach, because if we have the best ideas and we have the best system in the world, Chris, that maybe we should at least allow there to be a responsible way of doing this. Now, I'm not saying I'm for it. I'm just saying one can make that argument. And the other thing is, we were sitting there talking about, well, go with that first. I don't want to confound the points. Start with that first, Chris.
Well, first of all, I think relative to parents and their schools, I think Kara makes the most important point here. If I am looking at what is currently being taught in my school, if I don't want that to be taught in my school, then I have the right as the parent to say, no, I don't want this to be taught in my school. And let me just say, as somebody who has actually taught critical race theory, a couple of things. Number one, when you teach critical race theory, your students, on average, the highest grade you're going to get is a B. And the reason for that is because it is, like you said, Kara, it is a theory. It is hard for even law students to apply it. They responded to the notion of being colorblind. That's how this whole thing with Kim and Derek and all of them got started. But look, at the end of the day, it is a theory. It is like most of the theoretical courses you take. It's bullshit. It's a theory that pretty much says, here's a framework to apply it. And they're like, okay. And then they apply it and it just doesn't, because it's not meant to do anything. It is an academic exercise made for you to think about such, and such. But and most law schools don't even teach it. It is taught probably every other year, one semester. It's really, this is just invoking the muses.
And let me go into this without going that, because this could take us down a rabbit hole as well. And I'll go with Dr. M and I'll pass it around the room real quick before we go to one other thing and get out of here. But with that said, isn't there something to be said as well? I mean, we were talking about how it's not really a state level. It's not really the pundits. It's really something decided at the local level, but it's decided by local school boards which are elected officials, which is the government. And let's be honest, by and large, when you're talking about these little rinky-dinky areas, it's either very Republican because you're talking about a township where it's skewed to the right, or it's very liberal because you're talking about a city or a municipality that's skewed to the left. So now you're starting to talk about government banning certain things being taught in schools because of political correctness. It's kind of like the Huckleberry Finn controversy from 20 years ago. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe somebody actually said the N-word. Well, look at the context of where this novel was written, when it was written, who it's written about. Are we really teaching racial hatred because that word's on page 97 and was said once? Can't we just skip over the word? Do we have to take the book off the reading list as well? I mean, Chris, don't we start going down a path that we don't want to go down because we're trying to either avoid CRT or jam it down everybody's throats?
Well, but that's the way our system of government is set up. The local school boards have the ultimate say as to what textbooks they're going to purchase and why, and what curriculum they're going to allow and why. So if the question is it political and is it the government? The answer is yes, by design. That's the way this works. So we would have to upend the system. There is no other way of doing it. And at the very local level, they decide what they want their kids to be taught in school. And I think they have the right to be able to do that. The vehicle.
I just want to ask Lenny a question. Since when did you become a libertarian? I mean, that's what I want to know.
Oh, God.
It's called being a talk show host, Jeff. What are you doing here?
This is why I always disappoint people, because libertarians are like gay men. Gay men will always tell you that the straight guys they like are secretly gay, and libertarians will always tell you that the conservatives they like are secretly libertarian. Show me the lie. Show me the lie.
Oh my
well,
God.
honestly, as somebody who has some libertarian leanings, if I was in charge of it, and again, I'm not against school boards or people voting for school boards who will ban it. Honestly, I would allow some of those elements to be taught, and I would allow the counterpoint to be taught as well. I want more.
This is an interesting distinction, and I think this is what Lenny was getting at, and I think he's absolutely right here. Savor it, Lenny. Savor it. I think this is what he was getting at. There is a difference between indoctrination and information, right? So Chris is saying, I taught this because he's teaching at a collegiate level, and that's what you teach students. You teach people this philosophy, and that's Christianity versus Islam, you know.
During the founding of Oxford, when he was there, when it was first.
That's right. So that is, I believe that is something different that we're talking about, and it's very important not to get those things confused.
Yeah.
And the parents that I know, because I'm involved with several parent groups across the country as they start to organize against their school boards. The parents that I know aren't responding to, hey, this is a philosophical thing. Like there was a while back where after 9/11, there were a lot of teachers taking their kids to mosques, and and people were mad, and then teachers were like, well, we're just showing them this other like religious life that is within America, and blah blah blah. They weren't like advocating for it. Some people were, but those were big stories. But mostly people were just like, no, we're teaching this as like, here's a thing, and here's another thing, and here's another thing. Here are all of the different religions of the world. Here are all the different philosophies on race. But when you're talking about what's happening at the local level and what parents are responding to are things that are showing up in their curriculums that make them uncomfortable, that they identify as critical race theory, may or may not be, but sort of rooted in it. And this is the other difficult part of this conversation, is there's a lot of this that is just ethereal. It's not really like, here are the bullet points of critical race theory, and if you see them, then that's what you should be against. It's the same thing as having like hiring Marxist teachers or whatever. There's plenty of teachers in our school systems who are communists, plenty of them, and it bleeds into their daily lessons, and you can't ban that because you can't ban people. So it's a complicated issue, and I don't think
people though.
We should just there's a lot of people that need to be canceled in this discussion, by the way. But I do think Lenny makes a salient point. I'll end with that there's a difference between indoctrination and information. And I think what most people are pushing it back against, most, not all, is indoctrination.
Yes. Kira's ending there because she knows I'm going to talk about her article next before we get off the air. So, and I do want to talk about that because there's one thing.
It's a big deal.
What'd you say?
Oh, I was saying, thank you. It's a big deal actually today. It's kind of going viral, this thing.
Well, that's the whole reason why you text me and demanded that I talk about this or else, and gave me the
Lenny, we don't know inside baseball. As far as everybody here knows, everything Lenny does is completely voluntary, and it is. Look at him. It's no secret. Everybody, they are not coerced at all. I do not give them statements to read or compliments written down.
Just like none of us knew that Kevin Spacey was gay. Yeah, right.
Okay. They love being on the show with me, and everything they say, every kind of thing they say about me is completely voluntary.
Can I please get to the topic? Thank you. Kira, we were talking about things that are compulsory from the government, but then you have this now coming out from Facebook, where Facebook and Big Brother, or Facebook as Big Brother, whatever way you want to say it, is going to protect people so much. As you come across stuff online, there are now warnings coming up and saying, oh my gosh, you may have encountered a hate group. What can we do to help you? Here's his 800 number to help you if you need help after you read this post, that if you wanted to get out of this post, all you have to do is grab this thing called mouse and click and get out of it.
No,
a weird path.
It's really scary. So my podcast producer texted me this morning, and he's like, he is a center-right Black businessman out of Cleveland. Jeff is on the network too. You know, this guy is not extremist in any way. And he texts me this message today that he gets from Facebook, and it pops up and it says, you may have encountered a hate group. Here's how we can support you. You may have seen hateful content, or you may be involved in hateful content. Here, click through here to get support and help learn how people have been led out of the lifestyle of hate. And he was so angry because he was like, what in the hell are they talking about? Like, what does this mean? So I couldn't believe it. I threw it up on Twitter to see how people responded. And quite a few people, well, almost 1,000 people responded, yeah, I've been seeing this message today. Most people all of them were conservative. Most people were saying it pops up when I talk about CRT, transgender issues, or what was the other? Oh, January 6th. They were saying, like, if I share a meme or if I post an article that is like negative about these issues, I'm getting this thing that I may have encountered hateful material, and here's this group you can click on. So I figured out how to get to the group. It's this group called Life After Hate. And Life After Hate is an online 501c3 that is dedicated to leading people out of right-wing extremism. And that is where the chilling part to me, because we know all about Facebook shenanigans, but what they have done now is they have normalized the idea of any idea that is not left-wing leading to right-wing extremism. So you don't have to be a neo-Nazi or a member of the KKK to trigger someone now on Facebook. All you have to do is be somebody who might be leaning that way. And so what do left-wing people think leans that way? Well, if you voted for Trump, even if you voted for Trump because you wanted your taxes lowered, or if you say, you know what, I'm not comfortable with boys and girls sports. Ooh, I don't know. Now you're center right, but you're getting closer to the extremist right. So here's the website, to click on. It's normalizing the idea that any idea that is not left of center is extremism, and there's no mechanism for left-wing extremism on that message. It was just so bizarre and freaky.
And Dr. Metzler, I'm going to try to rush us through this because we're about to run out of time, but here's where this goes down a really slippery slope. If you're against raising taxes because you don't want to share the wealth with people that need help after COVID, and you don't want businesses to pay their fair share with so many people suffered over the last 18 months, you must be a right-wing extremist that is probably harboring some resentment towards the Black community, and you've been exploiting them with your businesses for years. That's not that far of a leap from where Kara just was to that next, if we're not careful, right?
Right. Yeah. And frankly, that what you've just described, really, as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, so Zuckerberg, we've been exposed to you and your entire enterprise's left-wing extremism. As a result of that, why don't you give us a warning relative to that? Look, the bottom line is that is the worst. I have never seen anything, and it just goes back to me, to Orwell. It is just the worst that I have seen relative to this. And people are comfortable with that. People are saying, oh, well, they're trying to protect me from really. And by the way, whose job is it every day to simply sit there and read all these posts and decide then if you need support, if you need help? What are we doing? What are we doing except going down the extreme rabbit hole?
Jeff, are we getting to a point in time where this is going to run its course because it's becoming so absurd that it has to run into the wall and completely crash and burn?
No. And when I read Kira's article, it scared the shit out of me. And there's a reason for that. Like, here's the thing, and I'm not going to go too long because I know we're limited on time. But if you read this message, this has PSYOP written all over it. I don't believe for 1 second that this is about combating extremism. This is propaganda. And it is nothing more than propaganda. And I don't care if I have a tinfoil hat on or not. When I read this thing, I have it up right now. Are you concerned that someone you know is becoming an extremist? Right there, they're trying to evoke an emotion. Are you concerned that somebody you know is becoming an extremist? Oh, what if it's my brother, sister, father, mother? We care about preventing extremism on Facebook. And then it says, others in your situation have received confidential support. That is a technique called social proof. It's a marketing concept. It's a persuasion tactic. By letting you know that other people have dealt with this too, you become more comfortable with the suggestion that maybe you're becoming an extremist or that somebody that you know is, just because you're talking about critical race theory or January 6th or what have you. And then it says how you can help. Hear stories and get advice from people who escaped violent extremist groups. That's a call to action. So this has got marketing all over it. This is a persuasive message, and it's not designed to cut down on any type of extremism. It's designed to get you to associate something with extremism without you even knowing that is being done to you. I mean, my background is in sales, so I've studied persuasion for over a decade, and I'm still studying persuasion. And this is textbook right here. So this is what Facebook is trying to do. This is a form of propaganda. Nothing more, nothing less. And it's dangerous if they continue. I don't even use Facebook like that. So I would never even known about this if Kira hadn't talked about it. But don't be surprised if Twitter does the same thing. The only way that they'll stop is if there's a backlash against this. Well, I'm not confident that there will be enough of a backlash for them to back off. But this is dangerous. We need to keep an eye on it.
Dr. Metzler, very quickly, and then we're going to wrap up the show. Is the backlash possibly the breakup of these big tech conglomerates? Is this another thing that eventually Congress goes after Zuckerberg on and says, and this is why Facebook can't be as powerful? In 30 seconds.
Well, yeah, perhaps. But look, the courts are not, I don't believe, really interested in the whole antitrust discussion. They're simply not. If you're looking at the jurisprudence, except for one judge, pretty much the court's like, you know what, none of our business. We're not interested in that. So it may be a preemptive strike to do that, but I don't think that's gonna happen. I just don't see where the backlash is gonna come from. It's not gonna come from there.
Well, the beauty of ending our topics with Dr. Metzler saying something is because he's so smart, he makes the rest of us look smart. So thank you, man. Now people are going to ask me if I'm an attorney for the next week. Kira Davis, people just know that you're famous and successful and all that other jazz. Can you tell us in 30 seconds what you got going on this week?
Well, this week it's the 4th of July celebration, of course. I'm going to enjoy that time with my family and have a good time and eat a lot of food that my body definitely doesn't need. And I have my podcast, Just Listen to Yourself. And of course, I just want to make sure everybody knows I'm doing my first live show next month in Cleveland at the Go Mode Cafe on St. Clair Avenue.
This month, it's July.
Oh, shoot. Oh, gosh. Child. I can't. Where is the time going? It's this month. It's July. Happy July. It's this month. July 24th. Go to eventbrite.com. Look up Just Listen to Yourself with Kira Davis. Get your tickets now. The venue is small, but we're going to have a really good time, and I'm looking forward to meeting everybody.
Jeff Charles, tell me what you're doing this week. Tell the good people out there what you're doing this week. Tell everybody what you're doing this week.
Yeah, so you can check me out on A Fresh Perspective on my YouTube channel and also my audio podcast, A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles. You got to check out both because it's different content on my live streams and different on my audio only podcast. Next week on Wednesday at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard, I will be interviewing Gabrielle Clark. She is a mother whose son has been subjected to some of this woke theology and critical race theory, and she has filed a lawsuit, and she's going to be telling me all about it. So hit me up.
Great.
So, Kira, don't take his time slot this time.
Well, we'll see.
Okay. Dr. Metzler, please tell us what groundbreaking historical thing that you're going to embarrass us with this week, where we're going to feel like,
Well, I don't know that it's groundbreaking or historical. Two things. One, on Sunday, we are going to host the first ever 4th of July barbecue for the homeless in Fort Lauderdale at the Mission. We're tenting our parking lot there, and we've had all the food donated, so we'll be doing that. And I'm also working on putting together a fundraiser, and that fundraiser will be all cannabis-infused meals. So there we go.
Is that for real?
Yeah. I'm
Oh,
serious.
shoot. I need to go get my flight.
Yeah, because I'm telling you, if you have cannabis-infused macaroni and cheese, for example, phenomenal.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I just learned something new. This blew my mind.
The meals.
All right.
Oh, the meals, the mashed potatoes, the whole. Oh.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
So
what are
that's
you doing with your life, Lenny?
I am going to be
Chris is
on
serving the homeless.
I know. I'm going to be on Newsmax on Sunday on July 4th.
Okay.
I will be on a special episode of Save the Nation, 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in the morning, where we will be doing segments from Gettysburg.
Oh,
Which is a pretty cool experience. And I will be eating cannabis-infused macaroni and cheese while we're walking.
Lies.
But there are cannabis-infused chefs. Seriously.
I know, and they were there when you helped found Oxford University. Never mind. Look, everybody, we love you. We are going to get out of here. Follow Kira, follow Jeff, follow Dr. Metzler. You don't have to worry about me, but make sure you're doing the due diligence with them. We'll be back here next week. We're going to be doing more stuff. Buy your tickets on Eventbrite, because Kara's going to knock it out of the park. Make sure you're following A Fresh Perspective. And make sure you're following what Dr. Metzler's doing down there in Florida. He's doing yeoman's work. He's doing God's work. And we all need to be more involved with helping to rebuild America post-pandemic and helping those that need help the most. In the meanwhile, enjoy your 4th of July. We will catch up to you soon. We love you. TCNGB, take care and God bless. Peace.